What's going on, everybody? This is your man JT, and I'm here with Cigar 101 from YaSigara. What's going on, everybody? This is going to be our first video for 2020. I'm excited what this new year holds, and also just to let you know, we got a podcast that's coming up pretty soon, and we'll give you some more information on YaSigara on the Facebook page. But anyway, today, I just want to talk to everybody. It's about a particular question that I always get, when I'm in a humidor. And it's about Cuban cigars. There's been countless times where I've had discussions, with people that say that Cuban cigars, that you can get them in the United States. So let me just clear that out right now. Cuban cigars are illegal, okay? You cannot get them in the United States legally, all right? Now, so no matter what you've heard or what someone told you, cigars from Cuba are illegal once again. Now, because of the Obama administration, now you are able at this time to bring some Cuban cigars back. Now, I'm not really 100% sure on the dollar amount or the amount. From what I'm understanding, it could be anywhere from $200 to $300. And as far as how many cigars you can bring back, it's probably going to be measured upon your personal consumption. So if you think you're going to go, over the seas or whatever the case may be, or across the border and buy a whole bunch of Cuban cigars to bring back to sell, to make money, pump your brakes, because it ain't going to happen. Now, a lot of people, especially kind of like novice that don't really know the story about, why Cubans are illegal. What I'm going to try to do at this moment is I'm going to try to give you a little history lesson. So I'm not going to bore you with like a lot of legal stuff. So I'm going to try to, throw this out there in like a conversational, type way. Well, basically it all started back in the 60s. So also, once again, I'm not going to give you particular years and dates and times like that. You can look that stuff up on Google if if you're into those numbers. But I'm just going to give you the story in a very unabridged way. So once again, it started back in the 60s when Kennedy was president, and Fidel Castro, who was the communist ruler in Cuba, formed a partnership with the Russians because they were communists as well. So they decided, hey, since you're a communist nation, whatever, would it be okay for us to have nuclear weapons on the coast of Cuba? Now, if anybody knows anything about geography, you know how close Cuba is to Florida. So Kennedy wasn't having that. There's no way you're going to put nuclear missiles off our borders. Okay, so that was like a part of the Cold War that we had, with the communist nations of Cuba and also Russia. So, with that being said, Kennedy imposed an embargo to say, hey, look, if you don't get these weapons of mass destruction away from our borders, I'm going to place this on you where we're not going to allow to trade with you. So you will not be able to get any US dollars to help you, financially, and also help your infrastructure. So, they didn't really care too much about that. I don't know the ins and outs of the conversations between Kennedy, Castro, and whoever, was, in Russia at the time. But anyway, he posed those sanctions of trade against Cuba. Kennedy did. Now, there's a story within that before Kennedy signed on for this, he had called and he had made a purchase of a large amount of Cuban cigars the day before he signed, that embargo, which is kind of funny, that he's going to stop Cuban cigars from, being sold, but then he going to grab a whole bunch before he writes the law. So basically, in a nutshell, that's why Cuban cigars are not allowed to be sold, because of, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, a lot of people feel that, Cuban cigars will probably end up, at some point in time, coming to the United States, on an import basis. Me personally, my opinion, sorry about the technical difficulties, but me personally, on my opinion, that's something that's probably not going to happen. And I'm going to give you, 3 of my reasons why. Probably number one, the biggest reason would be by the FDA, which is the Federal Drug Administration. Now, they are kind of like hell-bent on regulating tobacco, and their reasoning behind that is to stop teenagers from smoking, which, I understand that, but when you're lumping, cigarettes, vaping, and also cigars into like one entity, then that's where you're like kind of messing up, because they're all different. Smoking cigars is more like a culture. It's more like a hobby. Smoking cigarettes is more like a habit. It's totally different. From the makeup. There's like 300 hands that touch a cigar to make it. The cigars are made basically 100% tobacco, where you get cigarettes are made, with tobacco scraps and also added on, chemicals, more nicotine content and carcinogens, which makes, people more addicted to that. So that's totally different. But I understand why they want to do that. Now, but on the other hand, the FDA will make it hard for little mom and pop like cigar shops to flourish because of what they're planning on doing. One of the key things, which I thought was pretty ludicrous, was the fact that they want to charge cigar companies a certain amount of money in order for them to test the product. Now, the cigars, if they were made after a certain time, they have to go through FDA for testing. So, for an example, say, you're the beginning of a cigar company, and it's XYZ Cigars or whatever, and you have 4 brands of cigars that you're manufacturing, where under the FDA, you would have to submit an application for each one of those brands, those 4 brands, to be tested. Now, each one of those applications could cost a $250,000 fee to the FDA to test that particular cigar. Now, if you add that up, that's like $1 million you got to pay the FDA to test those cigars. And also, while they're testing, you can't sell them until they pass the testing. So not only are you giving the government $1 million to test these 4 brands of cigars, you can't make any money off of them because they're not approved during their standards while they're being tested. So that's one reason that I feel that Cubans will not come to the United States, because the Cubans are not going to give FDA any money to test their product. That to me is one of the main things. 2, there's this political, or this legal fight on the name Cohiba. Now, there's a governing body that deals with cigars in Cuba called Cuba Tobacco. And the head of that particular governing body said, it doesn't matter if they ever lift the embargo to Cuba. We will not send any Cuban cigars over to the United States unless we get our name Cohiba back. Now, I had done a video about this before, about the 2 different types of Cohibas, where there's the Cuban Cohiba, and then there's also the red dot Cohibas, which is made by General Tobacco, which is United States. So those 2, Cuba and General Tobacco, have been going back and forth, with who owns the rights of the word or the name Cohiba. And this has been going on ever since I think in the 90s, and it hasn't stopped. One ruling goes for the Cubans, one time there's a ruling that goes for General Tobacco, and it's like like a political tennis match going back and forth between those 2 for that particular name. So and if you think about it, do you really think that General Tobacco is going to drop the name Cohiba just for the Cubans to be able to bring their cigars over across the border? I mean, you would have to think about all the rebranding, and all the other things that they would have to do, if they drop that name. So that's the second reason why I don't think that's going to happen. And 3 rather, Cubans, they sell their cigars all over the world except for the United States. And I honestly believe that the United States is not going to make or break Cuba with their, exporting of Cuban cigars. It's just like, it doesn't matter. I mean, the Cuban cigars are very popular, and due to the fact that they're not here in our country, I don't think that's going to stop them, from bringing money to their bottom line. So, those are three basic reasons or opinions that I feel is why, Cubans will probably never, come over to the United States. Now, which is to me not really a bummer, because I've had, Cubans before, and, granted, they are some of the best cigars that you can have, on the planet, but one thing to me that, is a little different than the Cubans is the fact that, their cigars are made mainly with just Cuban tobacco. Like their binder, their wrapper, and their filler is all Cuban tobacco, which, is called a puro. And most of the cigars outside of Cuba are made with different types of blends of tobacco from all over the world. So you'll get an opportunity to smoke something, that may have, blends of Nicaragua or Honduran or Dominican all wrapped in one cigar. So you're getting the taste of different, tobaccos from all over in one stick, instead of, something, that's just with just Cuban tobacco. Now, don't get me wrong, due to the fact, that they are puros, that doesn't necessarily mean that every Cuban cigar is going to taste the same, because there are different regions within Cuba, that they have their tobacco, and it's, it's farmed differently, and the taste of the tobacco is going to be different from one region to the next. So, just because they're all made out of the Cuban Cuban tobacco doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to taste the same. So, in a nutshell, that's basically, what is, what's going on in the differences between, different Cuban cigars or whatever. Now, to people that come up to you and say, hey, Cuban cigars are not illegal, they just, are not aware, and you can definitely tell them, that, hey, cigars from Cuba are illegal, unfortunately, probably not in my lifetime they will ever be, because of, the issues that I just, brought forward. But I would say, hey, I don't get hung up on it, man, because there's like different cigars made from all over the world, that will probably like be some of the best cigars, that you ever had. So, don't get hung up on the Cubans, even though they're great, whatever, but just don't limit yourself, to just that. So, but that's it, in a nutshell. I wanted to just, go over a little bit of that, to, the club members here at YaSigara that, that might want to understand exactly, what the big deal about Cuban cigars, or are they legal or things like that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, this little talk that I had with you guys. We got more videos to come. Like I said before, we're getting ready to start a podcast. We're going to give some more information out on that, on our Facebook page. If you're not a member, if we have members that know people that are interested in cigars, invite them, to be, a part of the YaSigara family. We'll definitely appreciate that. And just keep looking, on some of the things that we're doing on the site. Matter of fact, we got a new website that's in development where you can also, purchase, cigars and other swag and stuff like that. You can look on the Facebook page for information on the website. That's on there too. And also, we just put out some packages where we're celebrating entrepreneurs that are members of YaSigara. So take a look at that. We have several packages, that we're going to help celebrate, like Black History Month is coming up, and also Valentine's Day. We're going to have some packages for that. So Once again, thanks everybody for taking time out to watch this video. We definitely appreciate the love. And hey, put some smoke in the air, baby.